Hello, I'm Lucy from Cruickshanks and I'm here today to talk to you about The Bread the Devil Knead by Lisa Allen-Agostini. This is the third book that I have read from the Women's Prize long list this year, and I know that loads of you out there are reading the whole long list, reading their way through like we are on this channel as well. So please do talk to me about your thoughts on this book or any of the others. Say hi in the comments, and if you're new to this channel, welcome. Lovely to have you on board. So yeah, the third book that I've read, and I liked it. I did enjoy it, but it's not my favourite one so far. And I think on balance, I would describe it as one that I admired more than I straight up enjoyed. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but I'll tell you what it's about first of all. I'll tell you the plot. So the book follows Ali, and she is a Trinidadian woman. She is a shop manager at a fashion store. She's just about to hit 40, and outwardly, you know, she's got her stuff together. You know, she looks cool, calm, composed, you know, living a happy life. But actually, behind closed doors, she is very much living the opposite. She is in an incredibly abusive relationship. She's having an affair with her boss, the owner of the store, and she is intensely lonely. She doesn't really have any friendships that she can turn to, and you know, she is kind of accepting that, hideous though her life is, this is her lot. This is what she is going to have forever. And, you know, that is where we are thrown into the story. It's set in Trinidad, and it is written entirely in Trinidadian dialect. That is kind of the setting, like more than, you know, written descriptions about where we are and what it looks like and smells like and all that stuff. Actually, the setting is the prose in which it's written, and it's a really vivid setting, like it's full on. To start with, like I found it quite hard. I was having to sort of reread sentences to get the meaning and to know where I am, so you have to read it quite slowly to take it in. But the further through the book that I got, the more, you know, I didn't have to think, I'd got it. You know, it sort of clicked how it worked. And that is one thing that I did enjoy, and actually, like I said at the beginning, really admired as well, because like to write an entire book in that way and to absorb, you know, the reader into that, I think is a really impressive thing to do, and actually quite a brave thing to do as well. It's like it's a bold statement, and it made the character really come alive in by doing it in her own voice, I think. Ali herself is a complicated character. So she's got a very hard shell, you know, a very sort of composed persona that she's presenting to the world. And actually, to start with, I found that hard shell was put up to the reader as well. So I found that, you know, even though she's in this really hideous situation, it took me a little while to warm to her, because you know, she's sort of kind of flippant about things, which, you know, is a defense mechanism, absolutely, and it's because the hideous things in her life have become normalized. But actually, you know, I found that she was a little bit of a hard nut to crack as well, just like the people around her did. And you see glimpses, like increasingly as the book progresses, into her past and, you know, all the things that have brought her to this place. And that absolutely softens her and, you know, made me more sympathetic to her. But initially, yeah, I struggled to sort of get into like her insights, do you know what I mean? Like just to get into her workings a little bit. And I think it's compounded by lots of things. So obviously writing in that dialect from the start, plus sort of this hard nut character, and also the plot for me as well took a little bit of time to grind into motion as well. So I think those three things at the start made it a little bit challenging for me to get into to begin with. And actually, the plot point, I think, that is the turning point, and actually the turning point in my mind where I sort of opened up to Ali a bit more, and probably, you know, where the language was all starting to click, is where she witnesses the murder of another abused woman, and that forces her to, you know, really look at her lot and say, is this what I'm willing to accept? And actually, you know, lifts her out of this position of being a little bit beaten. But I wanted that turning point to come earlier, because there was a lot of character building and scene setting and like establishing the status quo up front before it got to sort of that point. And I just wanted like a little bit more momentum up front. But it sounds like I'm being so negative, but it's not, you know, I'm nitpicking really. Like it's a good book. The style of it, so I talked about the language in which it's written. The thing that I think stood out to me style-wise, aside from the language, actually, is how unflinching this book is. And it is incredibly graphic. So there are really graphic passages of, you know, domestic abuse, violence, rape, child abuse, like really shockingly graphic descriptions that I know some people really, really won't like. You know, perfectly within their boundaries not to like. But I do think that that is a prime example of one thing that I admired about the book but didn't enjoy. I mean, you're never going to enjoy reading descriptions as graphic as that. But it's rare, I think, that books portray them in the way that this one does. Like you are forced to look at what is happening on the page. There's nothing hinted at. There's nothing, you know, happening just off screen. It is right in front of you, and it is raw, and it is incredibly difficult to read. And I don't think that happens in an enormous amount of books in this particular way, where, you know, it's not gratuitous in any way, shape or form. And actually it's not very women's prizey. You know, I struggle to think of another women's prize book that deals with things so explicitly, so graphically, I guess. You know, there's lots of the themes looked at, you know, in typical women's prize books, but actually the way in which they're described is a really brave and bold way to do it. And yeah, I think quite unusual for the women's prize, actually. So I'd be interested to know what other people thought, whether, you know, I don't want to say it's too much, because actually that's the point of the book, isn't it? You know, going, don't look away. But, you know, there were times when I was like, oh God, this is a lot. And I think my tolerance for reading things like that is probably quite high. So the themes, I guess, are, you know, they're pretty obvious, really. We're looking at violence against women. And in particular in this book, we're looking at intergenerational trauma. So violence almost that is passed down through the generations, and how repeated behaviours sort of shape lives before they've almost really started. So how, you know, the experiences of Ali's mother and her grandmother and all the women that have come before her actually have conditioned her into accepting this. But it's a story of hope as well, and about realising your self-worth, and, you know, the things that she can do to break those cycles, you know, to end this intergenerational trauma that's just like stacking up. And in that sense, it is a really hopeful book. But I think, you know, I was left feeling like the dark in it outweighed the light. And again, you know, you can't really criticise that in a book, can you? Because actually, for so many situations, that will be, you know, the real life way that it happens. And you have to take those moments of light, even if the dark is still absolutely enormous. But, you know, I guess it's, you know, I can't fault the book, but I can tell you what feeling I was left with, which was just, you know, still a little bit sad, still, you know, thoughtful book and an interesting book, you know, a bold and a brave book, and an unflinching book and an honest book, but one ultimately that I can't say that I loved it and that I wouldn't want to read it again. you know, but I am on balance glad that I read it to start with. And I'm scared that that review sounds way more negative than I actually felt reading the book. You know, and it's coming off the back of a few belters that I've read, but yeah, probably not my favourite one. And I'll be super interested to see like what makes the shortlist now, because there's so much variety. Like, how can you compare it? I don't even know. So anyway, if you've read this, what did you think? Am I along the right tracks? Do you agree? Disagree? Argue your point with me. Come on, tell me what you think. But I hope you're reading something great, whatever you're up to this week. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.